So we've already seen the circle element in action in earlier demos, but let's take a closer look at the building materials, or SVG Graphical Elements. Before we begin, we should know that most SVG Graphical Elements can have a fill attribute, which fills the shape with color, a stroke attribute, which sets the stroke color, and a stroke width that sets the size of the stroke. We will see these in the following examples. Ellipse. The ellipse, like the circle element, needs a center point. The difference is that it requires two radii, one for the x-axis and another for the y-axis. Rect. The rect element needs an x and y value to determine its location. This coordinate is where the top left corner will be positioned. It also requires a height and width. We can easily turn our rectangle into a rounded rectangle by adding an Rx for the radius of the corners along the x-axis, and then an Ry for the radius of the corners along the y-axis. Line. The line element creates a straight line between 2 points. These points are defined using x1, y1 for the first point, and x2, y2 for the second. Polyline. The polyline element is like a collection of connected line elements. The points are defined in a list using the points attribute. The list is in the form of x1, y1, x2, y2, x3, y3, and so on. Polygon. The polygon element is like a polyline element where the first and last points connect. Like the polyline element, the polygon uses a list of points. Path. All of these basic shape elements can be created with a path element. A path can contain a set of points, lines, and arcs. Paths have a path data attribute defined as a D attribute. This is where all the magic occurs. This path data attribute can contain move to, line, arcs, cubic, and quadratic Bezier, and close path instructions. Move to is noted with the letter M. It's essentially the starting point for the path. The W3C defines it as if the pen were lifted and moved to another location. Line to is noted with the letter L, and it's used to draw straight lines from one point to another. Arcs and cubic and quadratic Bezier curves are fairly complex and outside of the scope of this course. Also, it's unlikely that you would want to create them by hand, but the takeaway here is to understand that complex curve data can be part of the path element. Close path instructions are noted with the letter Z. It connects the current point to the initial point with a straight line, essentially closing the path. Text. The text element is used to add fully accessible text within an SVG graphic. The text element uses X and Y attributes to define its position. Use. The use element is an extremely powerful part of SVG. It's used to reference other SVGs or SVG elements that can be reused and render them in a given location, promoting reuse of graphics wherever possible. Next, let's take a look at some common SVG container elements.